The legal and public battle over migrants flown from Texas to Martha's Vineyard by the state of Florida continues today, as Governor Ron DeSantis released consent forms he said were signed by the migrants themselves. This, in part, a response to a local sheriff who's now investigating DeSantis for possible criminal charges. Late last week, 2 chartered private planes landed unannounced with no one to greet them. DeSantis reportedly sent a videographer to capture their arrival, so he could use that as well. And while I appreciate that governors from border states want other areas of the country to share more in the burden of a failed immigration policy, this stunt wasn't the way to do it. And now serious questions have arisen about whether this whole endeavor was even legal. Were the migrants duped? DeSantis pushed back on that idea during an appearance on Fox News.
They all signed consent forms to go, and then the vendor that is doing this for Florida provided them with a packet that had a map of Martha's Vineyard. It had the numbers for different services on Martha's Vineyard. Not only did they not welcome them, they deported them the next day.
Yesterday, a spokeswoman for the Florida governor released the consent forms, which seem intended to indemnify them from any legal action. The language of the form is fairly boilerplate, includes, quote, I, undersigned, agree to be transported by the benefactor or its designated representation to locations outside of Texas to location in sanctuary states. Florida governor's response came after a handful of migrants and advocacy groups filed a class action lawsuit against DeSantis for what it called a scheme targeting vulnerable people. It alleges that migrants were misled, told they were going to Boston or Washington, D.C., and given McDonald's gift cards if they agreed. Their lawyers say the migrants were given brochures with information about benefits that they aren't eligible for. But maybe the most significant development has been the sheriff in Bexar County, Texas, which includes San Antonio, who announced an investigation into possible criminal charges against DeSantis.
As we understand it, 48 migrants were lured, I will use the word lured, under false pretenses into staying at a hotel for a couple of days. They were taken by airplane. At a certain point, they were shuttled to an airplane where they were flown to Florida and then eventually flown to Martha's Vineyard.
Sheriff Javier Salazar, a Democrat, also said a woman was paid to recruit other migrants from Venezuela near a resource center in San Antonio. Joining me now is immigration lawyer Elizabeth Ricci. Thanks very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, so how significant as a legal matter, both in terms of a possible civil case or we'll talk about the criminal charges in a minute, are these consent forms?
Well, I don't think they're significant at all, Dan. Thanks for having me on, first of all. A couple of problems with this consent form. First of all, it talks about a benefactor. A benefactor is a legal term you see in the last will and testament. So who is the benefactor here? Is it the carrier? Is it Texas? Is it Florida? I don't really know what they're getting at when they're talking about a benefactor. And they had plenty of time to work on the language. It does seem like they kind of pulled it together from Google. But we knew for a year that the governor was going to do this. The legislature gave $12 million through the Department of Transportation for the transportation of unauthorized aliens. So they had plenty of time to make a good case for their consent form. It also talks about a sanctuary state. There's no such thing legally as a sanctuary state.
Yeah, but you know, all right. So, all right, look, it's true. Look, as I was reading that, I was thinking there's no such thing as a sanctuary state. It's obviously a politicized statement. But that doesn't change the reality, right, that if they sign these forms, there is some level of recognition of what was happening, right?
Sure. Let's read the language. So it says, hold harmless from any injuries and damages that may occur during the agreed transport to locations outside of Texas until the final destination. So yeah, it's true. You know, if somebody tripped on a suitcase in the aisle of the plane and broke their ankle, maybe they wouldn't get their medical bills paid for, but that's not what we're talking about. It certainly doesn't hold you harmless from criminal activity or being eligible for a U visa, for example. It is strictly about injury. And I think that there is a case for some criminal action here because this falls directly within the definition of trafficking in Florida, which includes transporting, enticing, patronizing a person for exploitation. And this is clearly exploitation.
Really?
The irony is,
let me ask you about that, about exploitation, right? Because I don't think there's going to be any criminal charges here.
I don't either.
And I think that when you talk about exploitation, as we've seen, there's been a recent New York Times article and others that are saying that for a lot of these people, they are ending up in a much better situation than if they were sitting homeless in Texas when no one seemed to care about them at that point. They're getting transported to places, put aside Martha's Vineyard for a minute, New York City, Washington, D.C., Chicago, places where there actually may be jobs for them. Is that really exploitation?
Well, it is. And the governor said in his press conference that they were promised, quote, better lives and jobs. And that was false. They did not have anything lined up for them. As you said earlier in the segment, they arrived and nothing was there. Was a map, which I understand wasn't even accurate, that was given to them, and I believe a $10 McDonald's gift card. That's enticement. And how consensual is it if someone with a badge and a gun gave them the consent form to begin with? As far as I know, no one refused to sign the consent form. It wasn't really something that they had a choice to do anyway. Regardless, if law enforcement agrees that there was trafficking, they could actually legalize as a result.
Yeah, look, we're going to have to see exactly what the details were about, I don't think he was saying they were promised jobs. I know that's what the lawyers are saying, is they're alleging that they were promising jobs. DeSantis is saying that he was encouraging them. They were being encouraged based on getting a better life, et cetera. Do you have a problem as an immigration lawyer with people being bused to cities? Let's assume that they don't do it in this stunt way, right? They don't just sort of allow them to get there, they're unannounced, et cetera. What do you make of simply saying, it's because it's been happening for years, where people have been bused to other cities, to other places, where they're better equipped to be able to deal with these migrants?
Well, that's the key, better equipped. Martha's Vineyard wasn't equipped. No one
right,
told
I'm
them
saying
that they
put
were
aside
coming,
Martha's Vineyard. I'm asking you generally, do you have a problem with busing of migrants to cities where there may be more opportunity for them?
I think that if that arrangement were made in advance in good faith with preparations that were appropriate, that would not be a problem. What I do have a problem with is paying a carrier almost $700,000, which equated to about $12,000 and change per person, to fly them from Florida. Florida had nothing to do with this. Those flights were not going to Florida. So why are Florida taxpayers paying for something that really is a federal matter?
Well, again, from the Florida perspective, right, putting aside the Florida to Texas to Martha's Vineyard piece, Florida taxpayers, via their legislature, decided that they wanted to spend $12 million on figuring out how to transport migrants. Whether it was done in the right or legal way, we shall see. Elizabeth Ricci, thank you very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Go to NewsNationNow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.